Welcome to another episode of Mindset Makeovers podcast. I am Lena Moxon, and today I have a beautiful friend joining us. This is somebody that has deeply impacted my life in ways I don't even think she has realized. And I'm very excited to bring her being, her essence, her energy to you today. Welcome, Jacqui.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on.
Now, I know that you are well known for being one of the best listeners around. And today I'm throwing you in front of the microphone. Today I don't want you to be sitting there listening and absorbing and just, being the complete beautiful support that you are for so many women. I'm asking you to kind of clear your throat and share what's on your heart and on your mind and in your body. And I'm so excited just to open up this dialogue with you because I know I can feel myself already doing it. I'm already speaking way more than I want to. In your presence, I witness just how safe it feels to truly speak from the heart. And I always walk away from conversations with you with a complete vulnerability hangover. It's not even the dirty laundry that I air to you. It's like the stuff that you've like hidden away at the back of a shelf somewhere that you don't want anybody to see ever. And I find with you, I don't just show it, I like wear it and parade around in it and dance in it. And then I walk away and I'm like, wow, two things. It feels really good to have offloaded that and to unburden myself and to have shared a part of myself or my story or my heart that I had kept hidden. But at the same time, holy fucking shit, what just happened? How did she do that? So, to begin our conversation today, I'd love for you to reflect because I think it's very useful on what makes you such a good listener, how you create soft space for people, and what you have learned about the importance of listening.
Wow. Going in deep first, this is going to bring up some stuff. Childhood. Yep, you got me going.
There's tears already.
Great start, Lena.
I love it. Take your time.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to hold back here. I'm the youngest child out of 5. And I don't often talk about, I normally just say I'm the youngest of 3. One thing I did growing up, I learned very young to tippy-toe around conflict. I was so clever at such a young age of knowing what people needed to hear. And so I chose very carefully what to say when, not so much with my mum and dad, more with my siblings. And I didn't even know I was doing it. And so there's a lot of blurred lines in my childhood because I was put on antidepressants at a very young age. And so I think I shut off from my emotions. So there's a lot I don't sort of remember. But I know through my teen years, I knew how to handle my brother really well because he was going through some just a roller coaster ride of a life, always getting into the wrong scenes and drugs and alcohol from a young age. And when he would get fired up, I would just know what to say to bring him back down. And it was interesting because, it was good because I've learned how to just get to people's heart, like to soften them, like from their emotion, like, to ease whatever they're going through. And yet at the same time in me doing that, I became the biggest people pleaser as well. I would shut off my throat, like I've always blocked off what I really want to say. Just always pleased people and said the right thing at the right time, and never knew how to express my own emotion and feelings because I was always controlling. I guess that I grew up in control mode and survival mode, and yet from a very compassionate side of that. So it's been interesting, like learning about all of this the past probably, I think, 9 years. I've been on a healing journey, and that's when I got off antidepressants and delved into the natural healing world. And in learning what I've learned, I've looked back over my childhood, my teen years, and God, I've realized I've just never known who I am because I've been so busy controlling conflict and preventing things from scaring me, I guess. So I grew up with a lot of fear, more or less. That's what it comes down to. So, but from that now, in recent years, I've learned to start opening my throat up. My throat chakra has always been blocked off. So it's been interesting starting to use my voice, because I used to always avoid people asking, how are you? That's why I was always a listener, because I didn't want to cry in front of people. Like, that was my biggest fear. It's like, oh God, I can't say what I'm going through with this person or that person. I'd just be a mess. But learning to unpack all of that and take the charge out of it. And now I don't, like, yes, I started crying at the beginning of this, but I don't cry like I used to when someone asks how I am. It's really sort of helped me open up my throat, get some words out, get who I really am out, and be me. It's still a work in process, obviously, but yeah. Did that answer your question?
It does. And I can relate so deeply to the still feeling emotional when we're kind of, turning inward and seeing what's there, but it not being such a draining and frightening experience when we learn to be more willing to turn inward and be introspective and know what it's like within us more often. I remember right at the beginning of my journey to become a certified somatic activated healer, one of the prompts at the beginning of the practice is to turn inward. And there's just a very simple question: what's it like within you today? And these hot tears would just form. And there was just this kind of fear that would arise within me around, like, what would I find? Because I'd been so busy creating the outer world and wearing the mask and doing all of the things, because I had been so terrified of what I might find if I truly touched the parts of me that I knew were tender and bruised and hurting. But as I have, allowed myself to feel safer in the practice and I turn inward more regularly now, the tears still form, but it's like it feels more like release. It feels more like a purification is taking place rather than these like hot tears of terror. Does that kind of resonate?
Totally, totally. It is. And you cry, and then it's like you take a breath and it's like, I feel lighter now. And you can just then talk like we are now. Like, it's so different to what it used to be for me.
And it's creating new relationships with these expressions. Like, sometimes if I get it through a full day and I haven't cried, and I don't mean like sitting in my room sobbing and it taking up all my day, but if there hasn't been something that has moved me to tears at some point, and sometimes it can be like a ridiculous thing that I've seen on TikTok, something that's just moved me in a way. And all of a sudden, I'm like just flooded with these tears. It doesn't have to be even something that's happened to me. If I get through a whole day and there haven't been tears, I ask myself, like, how closely connected were you to your heart today? How much were you actually just like in your mind and thinking and intellectualizing your way through the day? Were you really connected to your heart today? So for me, I've developed this relationship with my tears now that I'm like, oh, I'm as close to my heart as I can possibly be. And this is why I'm feeling so emotional. One of the things I was reflecting on recently was the way that I'm really in a space and a place in my life that I can bring acceptance to pretty much the full spectrum of emotion. I can be sad. It's okay for me to be sad. And in reflecting, I realized that I've spent a lot of my life, like you, trying to control other people's emotions and their situation and, even their perspectives and perceptions sometimes, like trying to convince people out of how they feel to try and control their emotions. Because for me, when I reflected on my upbringing, my mom, who struggled very much with her own mental health throughout her life, if she was sad, the consequence of that sadness meant that she was kind of isolated, untouchable. And so I started to relate to sadness as being this thing that created this separation between people. So if someone is sad, I started to panic because the little girl in me kind of like panics and thinks, oh, that means I can't come near you. That means you won't be attuned to my needs. That means I have to stop existing right now. So I panic
Yeah.
around sadness. And so being able to relate to sadness and move through sadness in a new way, to express and communicate my own sadness in new ways, has really just opened up this whole new world to me now. And my aspiration is that, I demonstrate to my son that we are allowed and safe to experience the full spectrum of emotion, and that my emotion, my experience, and the way that I express and communicate that isn't his burden to carry.
I
And
love that.
also redefining these negative emotions to be these emotions that just offer us an access point to our own wisdom, or maybe our value set, or, just some experience that we're having that's teaching us or showing us something that's useful. Did you want to speak to that?
I love that. Yeah, like what you've spoken about then with your son, and understanding emotion. Like, we missed out on teaching our kids that as they were growing up, because they're now 22 and 25, and we really only started delving into self-development world probably 4 years ago. But and so they'd grown up by that point. So it's almost like we were playing catch up with the kids, going, hey guys, we're sorry this happened. We understand now as parents that, we did the best we could with what we knew, but we didn't teach you how to regulate your emotions. We didn't, like you said, about sadness being okay and all the emotions being okay and understanding what they mean. Like, we just had no idea. And so I love hearing now when parents with younger kids are already doing that. They've got that understanding, and it's just, I take my hat off to all of you with young kids now doing the work. It's just incredible.
I want to kind of like flip back to you though. And when I hear that there are parents with adult children that are having these conversations and are willing to reflect on the best that they did, and willing to recognize that I did the best that I could, but perhaps you have an experience that you might like to kind of reflect on and share with me, and holding space for their adult children to say, yeah, like this kind of sucked, and to not take it so personally that it becomes like conflict or confrontation. I just think like that to me is like, whoo, activating new levels truly of accountability. And could you speak to that? Because I think it's definitely from my seat, like I'm inspired by it. And you don't necessarily have to be a parent to kind of relate to this conversation. It can be anyone that has, I guess, embodied a certain identity or iteration of self that we look back on now and we're like, whoops, whoops. Which I think, if we're like, actually reflecting and we're doing the work, most of what we have unconsciously done within our lives, we're going to look back and go like, oh, shit. So did you want to speak to that?
Oh, wow. One thing that always pops up with me with how we brought our kids up is we never knew how to set boundaries. We were in survival mode, bringing them up, and there were many oopsies along the way. But at the same time, I've worked on a lot of guilt that I carried because of how we brought them up. So there's just so many layers to it. but it's been awesome learning how to speak to them over the past few years and open up those vulnerable things and apologize to them, and try to open up the space for them to feel like they can finally speak to us without getting in trouble. Or like, see, Steve and I operated differently. I was the emotional avoidant parent. Like, if shit went down, I'd disappear. It was too hard. Whereas Steve would get angry. And not that I want to speak for Steve, but the kids grew up in fear. Like, they felt like they couldn't talk to me because I'd get upset and just cry and disappear. And they couldn't talk to Steve because he'd fire up and get angry and scare the shit out of them. So it took a lot of like stripping the layers off for them to go, oh, we're safe now. We can say whatever we want and have deep discussions with our parents, and we'll listen. I mean, yeah, we're human. There's still times where I'm always getting triggered, especially with my daughter. Just it's still constant and there. It's like the triggers don't go away, but they lessen, they diminish a bit. And I've learned tools to, not blurt out things that aggravate the shit out of her, and yeah, you just learn how to speak differently to your kids. And that's been huge, like massive. So there was always a lot of conflict between my daughter and I, and it started, I think, more so when she was 12, naturally, start of puberty. And then a lot of fear came in for me, because as she was growing up, she was reminding me of things I went through in my childhood. So it was almost became a point where I didn't feel like a mother. I felt like my inner child again, and I was in survival mode again because of stuff she was going through. And I'm like, this is painful. I can't deal with it. So there's always been a lot of resistance in the relationship on my part. She's always tried to sort of reach out to me, and there's just been that brick wall. So there's just so much. Oh my God, we could do 10 episodes, I think, to unpack it all. But we've come a long way, a very long way. And, Talia has done a lot of work now herself, which has been so awesome to see. And our son, he just reads book after book after book, and that's how he learns, how to work on himself. And it's been a really interesting journey, and there's nothing better than watching your kids come out the other side. Think, wow, yes, we fucked them up, but fucking hell, look at them now. It's yeah, it's good.
It's such an interesting thing, right? I think there's growth when we, as humans, have that consciousness click where we look at our parents and we see them as human beings, and we take them off the pedestal that we might have placed them on, that has made us really angry. I know for me, for a lot of my life, I've been very angry at my parents and just their decision making and the choices they made, and even just their behaviors and their being has made me really resentful and angry. And, I had this moment where I just kind of realized, like, okay, this is what it means to look at a person and soften enough to realize they're not their behavior, they're not their choices, they're not any of that. They are innately good. Can I bring this understanding that I so willingly take on when I'm in conversation, whether it's in circle or in community, or when we're sitting and drinking our cacao and we're like, yes, I know you are innately good. Can I bring these concepts that I've intellectualized enough to feel inspired and excited by, and take them to the people that
Yeah.
trigger the actual fuck out of me. Right. And
Ooh.
it's a really, I think for most of us, right, we say our family triggers us, but what happens within us is we like to think we're so far ahead in our own journeying and our own integration and our own actualizing and being around the people that have, in a lot of ways, been the cause and conditions for us to go searching and seeking on our own spiritual journey, reveals to us just how actualized or integrated what we, have conceptualized and intellectualized actually is in our being. And I can relate very much, to your son who's like reading all the things and understanding all the things and intellectualizing all the things. And a lot of my frustration has come from understanding, but then realizing years later that my understanding wasn't supporting embodiment, and that
Yeah.
I could understand, we'll take my dad as the example, why he was the way he was, maybe why he'd made certain decisions, why I felt the way I did in his presence. I understood it. I understood the ways that maybe I could support myself moving forward, but in his presence, my body would react in the same way every time. And no book, no podcast, nothing that I had ever,
No.
supported myself with helped me in, learning how to make my body feel different within that moment. But I think what you highlight is beautiful when you said there's layers to it and it is a journey and we have to just allow ourselves to be in process. And I think
Yeah.
for most people, the frustration comes when we think, because we have the intention to heal and that we've, been devoted to the work, and we all kind of rattle off like, I've been really trying now for 5 years or 9 years or whatever. Fuck, shouldn't I be better by now? And I
Haven't
think
I ticked all the boxes and removed and released?
and I think it's just a lovely offering. I actually have no wisdom to offer here apart from the fact that the human experience is one of paradox, is one of duality, is one of having far too many kind of dark nights of the soul. And it's so beautiful, Jacqui, to come into contact with women like you who are so willing to be open about potential and possibility, but also to say, yes, my love, I'm in the mud with you. It's not about love and light.
Yeah.
There's none of that
Yeah.
spiritual performative bullshit. It's like, yes, I'm in the mud with you. And that's
Yeah.
what I appreciate so much, that I feel like you have this beautiful balance of the realism of what it's like to be human, but also the open heart of potential and possibility. And so I would love to know uh, and I always hesitate to ask this question, right? Because I'm about to ask you, like, are there any kind of like personal practices that you have that support your alignment or your intention setting, or just wipe the lens of the way that you see yourself in the world? And my hesitation around asking this question is that I never want to lead somebody into speaking of it in a way or hearing it in a way that suggests we need some kind of like rigid routine to be the best version of ourselves. So I ask this gently, not as a way for other women to replicate what you're doing, but just to kind of like hold a little bit of space for other women to hear into, well, how do I break the habit of being myself? What are some of the things that other women are doing that I've just never seen before or heard about? It's never been, role modeled to me to do these things for myself.
Yeah, one thing I've learned recently is, and I've always been hard on myself for it, is I do things very slowly. In my mind, I do when it comes to healing. And I would get frustrated because I would compare myself to my husband. My husband goes into a breathwork session, his very first one, has an awakening. Bang, like, yes, he's still working on himself, but I just ever so gently go about little things, implementing things. And I've learned why since that as well. Just quickly, I was told that the reason why I do everything slowly is because I've grown up having to be very cautious, because I was always protecting myself and, in survival mode. So I would cautiously step into things and go slowly and steadily. And that's why my healing process has been quite lengthy and gentle and slow. So what I do, and probably more so the last 3 years specifically, is if I see something I want to try or do, I'm like, oh, that looks good, that looks interesting. Or I go, God, that looks fucked. Whatever it is, I sit with it. I go, okay, why do I think that's fucked? And I'm like, that's my ego talking. I need to step into that because it's extremely uncomfortable. And there's fear around what could happen going to do that. And so I've learned to step into spaces slowly but surely, just edge my way in and try things. And that's where all the growth has happened for me. And, you know, more flow has come into my life since starting to step into these uncomfortable spaces. And, you know, then I'll decide, okay, I'm ready to now go and do this. And I don't overanalyze it. I've learned to go, okay, I'm not going to sit there and analyze why I think I need to do that. I was just trusting that, okay, this has popped into my head, my mind, my body for a reason. It felt right as soon as it came in, so I'm going to do that now. So like I've, you know, and it can be like women's circles, Claire's wild being events, like the very first one I went to, I thought that was fucked up. But I'm like, I need to do this. I need to get naked because I have always shat myself about being naked in front of anyone. Like there was so much fear due to stuff that went on in my childhood. So it's like, why would women do that? Why would women put photos on social media half naked? Like I don't. And so I've been through so many, you know, things like that. And now it's like I completely get it. I completely understand it. And now that I'm a photographer, it's like, God, you know, it's awesome looking back on how I used to feel around things like that. So like everything I've done the last few years has led to the next thing. It's led to the next thing. And I'm not good at routine. I don't have structure. I always thought I was always in my masculine, but so many people have gone, you don't have a masculine bone in your body. Like, so I'm not a routine person. I can't say, oh, I do this every day. And that's been my healing journey. It's like, nah, I'm all over the shop. But the one thing is trusting my intuition, just little by little trusting it and feeling into it and making that next step, that next move. And that's just how I operate now. I don't plan ahead too much. I just take day by day, just little by little, edge along. And like, I feel it in me. I'm like, fuck, a week ago, I wouldn't have done that. And then all of a sudden I'm doing it. It's like, yes, pat on the back, celebrate, you know. So that's my little bit of wisdom on how I've healed and sort of how I go about things, which to me feels like it's quite different to what society tells you to do. It's like, you've got to journal, you've got to do this, you've got to do great gratitude. And it's like, I forget.
It's just busyness repackaged and repurposed to look nice, isn't it? I relate totally. I had posted something on I think it was Instagram last week around how I don't even want the women that I'm working with to have specific goals anymore. I don't want you to be outcome focused. I don't want you to be projecting into this like imagined future that's going to be better and design yourself and your life, you know, to meet that. I want you to meet yourself in the moment that you are in and ask yourself, what's here?
That's it. How's it feel in the body
What
now?
Yes. What do I need here and now? You know?
Yeah.
The last time that I got to see you in person, Jacqui, I was like really going through it. It was only a couple of weeks ago, I think, actually. Time is so like
Oh, I
a
don't
strange
know
concept
time.
to me. As I say that, I'm like, actually, how long ago? I feel like,
It was longer, but it feels like a couple of weeks ago.
anyway, feels like a heartbeat ago. Um, I was just really going through it within my marriage with my husband. We were both just kind of just up against it within the world and within ourselves, and then, within our relationship. And I had created this dynamic of just like opposition. And the way that I was just seeing him and relating to him was just, it felt really hard. It felt really difficult. And, my coping mechanisms of the past have been like retreat, run away, all of that. And I was really struggling because of the devotion that I have to my husband and to our relationship. And every part of my body was saying to me, run away. But every part of the, daily practice I have in alignment and devotion was saying to me, like, well, you can't do that, girl. So I was just like in this state of just complete breakdown, in every way. And I just so appreciated that, we had this moment. I had just done a somatic activated healing session. And so that kind of like, you can't lie once you've kind of like been through that. When someone says to you, how are you? I was like broken wide open. Like my heart was like out of my throat. And so you said, like, how are you? And I just, shared, like, I'm not fucking good. Things are really hard right now. My relationship today in this moment feels like shit. And that's really scary. And I just kind of went on and on and on. And I share this because I so appreciated that you allowed me to just speak of the current reality that I was experiencing. Uh, and you didn't ask me to judge it. You didn't ask me to decide, well, what are you going to do? You didn't bring any of your own kind of judgment to it. You just allowed me to have this conversation that I was unburdening myself in sharing what is in this moment. And I just got to talk and talk. And I remember you just kind of sitting in the pause with me when I would come to the end of a sentence. And what I realized and what I witnessed was so many people in that moment of silence, in that moment of uncomfortable pause, would kind of like just begin like speaking themselves or like relating it to themselves to try and like fill that space. And you just left me in that moment of like pause and silence where I was able to just like see what else was there and arising within me. And as a person who is devoted to doing that for other people, it was actually a very confronting experience for me to be realizing in real time what was happening. Like I was very aware, like, fuck, she's holding really powerful space for me right now. It was like I was observing myself, like, she's holding really powerful space, and my heart is just feeling really safe. And I'm speaking from heart space, and oh my God, more is coming up. And it was like, once I started, I could not stop myself from just like sharing all of it. And I share this now because what I appreciate is that you let me say my piece and you let me say all of it and you let it be my story, my experience, my reflection. But then you did the kindest thing ever and offered a yes, my love, just like me, right? You allowed me to benefit from the wisdom of the experience that you have. And as I say this now, I feel like I'm about to like casually throw an insult at you, and I don't mean it as an insult at all. But it's such a beautiful gift when you speak to someone who is years ahead of you within their experience and has wisdom, and you can look at and trust and share from. It was a beautiful thing for me to not have to pretend to be expert in that moment and to not have it figured out, and to say, like, I'm only 6 years into this fucking relationship and my history of relationship isn't actually that great. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't fucking know what I'm doing. And to have you just let me feel like it was safe to actually just own that for myself allowed me to be open to hearing your feedback. But it was actually deeply healing for me, because as I felt myself be like, I don't know what I'm doing, I actually allowed myself to have this exhale that revealed to me, wow, you've been really pressuring yourself to have this all figured out. You've thought you should have the answers. You thought you shouldn't be stuffing it up. You don't know what you're doing. Oh, you don't know what you're doing. And so it felt okay in that moment. It wasn't like I realized that and was like, I don't know what I'm doing. It was just this permission to be like, okay, You don't know what you're doing. And I think it really allowed me to listen in to that conversation with you that day. So I want to thank you, but I also would love you to speak on the gift of being open and honest enough to share parts of your story that are going to benefit others, and how we can see the things that we have learned and we have actualized as not just being for our own benefit, but, you know, being part of the power and part of the leadership that we can then stand in to offer up collective healing to others, and why we should, when ready, or maybe even when we're not ready, begin to use our life experience and our stories as the medicine that other people may need.
Oh yeah. It's interesting. I love trying to, yeah, bring that awareness to people about how to listen and really listen. Like, so many of us grow up not knowing how to listen. And that in itself is such a challenging thing for people to do, I find. And I don't know if it's something that comes naturally to me. I feel like that it's a part of me, and that's sort of my gift, if you I couldn't if I can
Yes,
call it that.
call it that. Yes, you can.
Okay. And I do know I have this effect on people. Like, I often find if I go to a party or a gathering or whatever, and I see someone, um, it takes me nothing and they're in tears. Like, they're just, Jacqui, you've done it to me again. And over the years, I'm like, wow, I have this thing that I do to people, and I didn't quite understand it, but now I'm understanding, hang on, I feel like it's why I'm here. Like, to hold people in a way that they're not used to being held. And I don't even remember what your question was, but
My question more so was around, can you speak to how important it is, if and when we feel ready, to have the courage to share our own stories and what we've actualized and what we've experienced and what we now understand as part of the medicine that other people may need, and to feel more empowered to talk about ourselves. Sometimes we feel like, oh, I don't want to make it all about me. I don't want it to sound like I know what
yeah.
I'm talking about. But how can that be medicine for other people?
Oh, whenever I've been in a circle and we all start sharing, like, I used to freak out going, oh God, it's nearly my turn. It's nearly my turn. But I soon learned that if you fully listen to what people are sharing of their own story, it's like, whoa, that's medicine right there. Like, learning to open up and tell your story. You don't have to know how to fix someone. I mean, we shouldn't be fixing people anyway. But understanding that, yeah, your story is so powerful, but we often judge it. Oh, it's not as, what I've been through isn't as bad as what she's been through. I'm not going to share that. That's not going to help anyone, but it always helps. There's always something in your story to help someone else, and learning to slowly but surely take enough layers off to allow yourself to speak into your story and not be afraid. It took me a long time to be able to do it. But I honestly think it's one of the most powerful things to be able to do, is to share your story. And because, I mean, it's yours, it's wisdom, and you've lived through things and you've dealt with things in your own way, and you can't beat that. Like, oh, I can't, yeah.
In somatic activated healing, right? The tagline, for lack of a better word, is to just drop the story and be with the feeling. And so much of what we communicate is done without words. It's like, the body is used truly as the expression. As a photographer, I bet you can speak to this, deeply. I know one of the first photo shoots that I had ever kind of said yes to. I definitely didn't seek it out myself. Our mutual beautiful friend Claire had reached out
Yeah.
to me and said, "Can I take photos of you?" And I was like, I literally only did it because the people pleaser in me was like, I really like this girl. I want to be friends with her. Yes, just do it. And I remember feeling like, well, I don't have, no one's ever going to see these photos. Let's just go and have this experience and just see what it's like. And the storytelling that came through those photos, me being able to witness myself through those photos and the story that it communicated to me about who I actually was so fucking jarring as compared to the story I was telling myself about who I was. And those photos forever cracked something wide open in me. I remember, I think one of the things that I said was like, these photos tell a story of survival I didn't even know I was living right now. Like there was just a power to witnessing myself. Could you please, and I know you can, so I'm excited to ask, speak to the way photography can really expose us to story within ourselves and as ourselves and of ourselves in a way that our words never fucking could.
Yeah, gosh. And we all know what it's like to step in front of that camera, that feeling in your body of awkwardness. And it's and I see it in people all the time because we all do it. Like I do it. I feel an awkwardness in front of a camera. And so I find it shows like if you sit and listen to your body, what's going on in that moment, you'll pick up on those little things that niggle away at you all the time, but you don't always see it. We're so, yeah, I know, like me personally, when I've been in front of the camera, having my photos taken, you go through these motions of, oh, I don't know how to be right now. I feel naked, but I'm not naked. I've got clothes on. Why? Why is this happening? And yeah, understanding that feeling, I see it in others straight away, and I do my best just to make people feel comfortable, and just talk to them and not make the camera obvious. Like I think that's where my, as I mentioned before, like I've been trying to figure out what my gift is in life. I use my gifts in those moments with people to just allow them to be themselves, not force anything. Is that answering what you asked?
It really is. Another thing that
Yeah,
I've noticed is that if we step in front of a camera and we try and kind of like perform ourselves and we try and take certain shapes or forms or expressions that are in some ways like practiced or rehearsed, the inner critic is right there just berating us the whole time.
totally.
When we actually step into expansion and we let ourselves be creative and we let ourselves kind of just find out what's beyond that awkward hesitation I'm feeling. If I really lean into the like, oh, this is new. Oh, I've never done this before. Do I have the audacity to be new in this moment? You would think that the inner critic would get louder, but actually it has nothing to say yet because it's happening in real time. And I think that's the freedom that we all experience. It's like, ha, for once, my inner critic has nothing to say yet. It's not poised and ready with the attack because it doesn't know either. And I find myself ahead of it. I'm in this true space of creation. And when that is captured on film, your potential and your possibility to expand and be in a space of creation as yourself, that is the fucking magic. And I think women like you that have this like genius to capture those moments, to see it in real time as it's unfolding and to capture it, it truly is a gift. And it's something that you can't experience of yourself as yourself without the facilitation of somebody like a photographer capturing it for you so that you can reflect on it.
I love that. Yeah. Seeing yourself in those moments is so powerful. So powerful.
In terms of photography, what has been, the most expansive part of allowing yourself to claim photographer as your current kind of like expression of purpose at the moment? Because I believe, like you've said, our purpose is like it's inherent, it's innate, it's an expression of what we offer to people. And I think we can kind of see that manifest in many different ways. I'm not of the belief that it falls under the umbrella of a job description. So I think that you're just able to activate your purpose at the moment behind the lens of a camera. But what have you found in terms of picking up the camera and demonstration of purpose for yourself at the moment?
I think joy. I've found, joy. I've tried many things. I've tried so many things and not finished them or given up or whatnot. But there was something with photography, and I think it allowed me to, because there was at one point I was nearly going to become a life coach. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, no, I don't think I'd cope. I'd spend 24/7 crying and absorbing everything as much as I love helping people. So I'm like, okay, I won't do that. And it's almost like with photography, there's so many things that bring me joy that I can add into it and do at the same time. Like I've realized how important nature is the last few years and what that can do for your mental health. And I love being creative and arty, and I've always had that in me, but never known what to do with it or what I truly liked. And I love making people laugh. Like that is something that brings me so much joy. But I also love allowing people to feel like they can be completely natural. They don't have to put effort, like a massive amount of effort in preparation to go and have a photo shoot done. And I think as society, the way it is, like we're bombarded with this has to look a certain way and it has to look like this to be able to put it on Instagram. And I love people being able to just let go and be truly themselves. And it's like all these puzzle pieces have finally come together for me. And I'm like, fuck, this photography thing is giving me so much of all these little pieces I've been trusting my intuition on, heading towards, didn't know what I was heading towards, but I was just allowing. And then all of a sudden it's like, I realized I met Claire for a reason. And this was the whole journey that has led to me now officially becoming a photographer. And I thank Claire so much for where I'm at now. This will make me cry again.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm good. But there's so much has come along thanks to Claire and me allowing these things to come along. And like I was always too scared to step more into the cacao ceremony space, and like I'd done courses and worked with people and learnt all about it, but I was too scared to step into the space. I'm like, because I always want things to be full integrity before I step into it. Has to be full of integrity. And she just opened up a door for me and said, when you're ready, I'd love you to do a cacao ceremony. And I finally felt ready and I started doing that. And and she opened up the door for the photography as well, and all the things. And so I just kept following, and, you know, allowing the doors to open, slowly stepping in. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I think I'm ready now to do it myself. And so there was almost a mourning process that both Claire and I went through, when it's almost like, wow, Jacqui's spreading her wings finally. Like, it felt really quite emotional at the time, but I'll forever be grateful for Claire.
Mm. Mm. It's a very special energy that she has magnetized, like all of the women kind of that have been magnetized to that space. I think when we take a
Yeah.
bird's eye view, we're like, it all makes sense why we've all had to
Yeah.
come into each other's lives in the way that we have. And I highlight that group of women, this friendship that we all have with each other, because I think I didn't know it existed, that
No.
you could meet women that would be so in tune with themselves that they are willing to look at another woman and see the giftedness of her and highlight it and have it be this self-sustaining thing, that it's like, it doesn't take away from me to speak to the beauty, the grace, the giftedness I see in you, because I also recognize, because I see it in you, it is within me. And we just have this kind of self-fulfilling support. It's not like one gets ahead, it's we all go together, and we all
Yeah.
have to go together.
Yeah.
It's such a deeply healing and beautiful kind of magnetism that we all have. And I think seeing you activate the audacity to say, like, okay, I am deeply grateful. I did enter this space through this door, but here's a window for me now, you know? And I think it's a
Yeah.
really beautiful thing, because a lot of women may be fearful that it's like, well, I have to stay within the room that I was kind of ushered into. Do you want to
Yeah.
speak to that? Because I think that's I've experienced it recently myself, where I've accepted a role, and I wasn't the first person to accept that role. Somebody was in it before me. It hasn't worked out, and I've moved into the space, and there has been a hesitation for me to fully, boldly, proudly, loudly declare, like, oh my God, I get to do this thing now, because there's this awareness that, like, oh, there's this, I don't know, complete fear around claiming who I am, with this kind of sticky residue of feeling like if I claim it for myself, I'm in some way taking away from another. And while logically I know that's not true, the feeling is there. So can you speak to it as a woman that's had the audacity to just spread her wings, as you've said?
Oh, and I think that's why I have always done things so slowly, because the people pleaser in me, it's like, oh, I can't hurt her feelings. I can't do this. It looks like this, or it looks like I might have just gone along for the ride, learned what I needed to learn, and now I'm taking it for myself. Like, all the thoughts and stories, and I guess self-sabotage in a way as well comes in, because your ego's got all the stories coming, and it's like stopping you from being who you truly are or need to step into. It was hard. It took me quite a while to find the courage to fully believe in myself, but also know that, and Claire and I had many conversations about all of this sort of stuff, and I would say, God, I feel horrible. Like, I feel like me stepping away is going to hurt you, and of course she didn't judge anything I was doing. She understands that, like, people come into her life for a reason, and she is the world's best guide. She guides people so beautifully, and she understands that's her purpose in life, is to help women find the courage within themselves and spread their wings out the other side, and then someone else comes along and goes through the process. And So yeah, it took me a while, one, to trust myself, but two, to go, okay, I need to do this for myself and not worry about constantly what it's doing to someone else, or understand that I'm doing it from the heart. I'm not, just going along for the ride and using someone for it along the way. And it's been interesting and challenging, but now I've come out the other side and it's like, oh, I did it, and I was always meant to end up here, and it hasn't hurt anyone. Everything that happened along the way was supposed to happen. Yeah, it's been fascinating.
And here you are now as an example. It's always funny to me that the thing that's hard for us to move through, and we just think like, oh, and it's over and I've done it and everything's okay. And then there's people around us that are like, can you tell that story again? because I need to know, like, how did that happen? And we're like, oh my God, I don't even want to think about it. I've just survived it. But sometimes our surviving supports somebody else's thriving, and this is what I mean
Yeah,
when it's like our storytelling is important. That none of us just arrive where we are just, magically. It's not like poof. We've all moved through so many different things. And I think to speak to the human experience of transcending all of the doubt and the inner critic and the self-sabotage and all of that is the medicine that we need. It's not
yeah,
about claiming like, oh, fill this role, do this thing, and you'll feel better. It's like, but how do we get there? How do I survive all of the doubt and the hesitation and the resistance and keep moving forward, at a pace that feels really good for me? So I thank
yeah,
you. I
yeah,
thank you for being willing to share what it's been like for you, because I think it's different for everybody, right? And
exactly.
we see those people sometimes who like blaze their own trail and they just seem so sure and certain, and bless them. May every fantasy of theirs be lived. But, for some of us, we are more cautious in our approach. And I think
Mm,
everything that you've shared today is such beautiful permission for women to feel into their own pace, to acknowledge why they might be like that, but also to just know that it's okay to just support ourselves moving forward at our own pace in our own way.
yeah, fully agree.
I know we have gone well over time, but give me 2 more minutes, my love, because the first time that we had met each other, I remember you were saying like, "Oh, I'm thinking of moving from the city to a regional town," which is something that I had done. And as you were saying that, I heard myself be like, "Fucking do it," with this like conviction and certainty of like, yes. And I realized in that conversation, oh, I'm actually really happy that I've done that. Like, wow, I actually have a lot of, very powerful opinions around why we should be moving out of the city. We don't have to stay where we kind of had set up camp for ourselves. So being mindful of your time in 2 minutes. I don't know why I've become the unofficial like spokesperson for get the fuck out of the city. And you're cheering as I'm saying it. Do you want to speak to what your experience has been? And one is not necessarily better than the other, right? But I just speak to many of the friends that I have grown up with who, like me, maybe had no concept or idea or thought that we could actually move and life
Mm,
could be different. Like that was never an option presented to us. So I just like to share, like, hello from the other side.
yes. Oh, yes. I love this topic. I think as you grow up, society always says, you go to kindergarten, you go to school, you go to high school, you get ready to choose a college to go, uni to go to. What do you want to do when you're older? Okay. And you then plan when you get married, when you have kids, you buy a house, you have a house mortgage, and then that's it. You get ready to retire eventually. So that someone said this, and I can't remember the person, it's like you're preparing to die. You're constantly preparing for your death and you're not living. And I think because we grow up like that, it's like, well, you don't move around. Like you've bought a house, you settle. And we always thought, no, we don't care. Like we eventually moved from the outer suburbs of Melbourne into the city in 2019. because that was our thing back then. It's like we want to downsize, we want to live close to the city. Steve works in the city, it'll cut his travel time down ridiculously. And so we wanted the city life. And so we did that 2019, which then went into COVID lockdowns. We needed a bigger place. So we found somewhere, moved from South Melbourne to South Yarra because we found a 3-bedroom because our son and his girlfriend was living with us at the time. And we were all at home working and going through life. And then all of a sudden, my husband said to me one day, because we were thinking of moving again, because our son was going to move out. We're like, oh, what should we do? Where should we move? And we're just in our heads like, well, we'll stay close to the city, of course. And then all of a sudden he's like, because I work remote now, we can move anywhere. And like all of a sudden our thoughts and beliefs and everything started to change. And we've always loved the coastal lifestyle down. We've always gone to Lawn every summer and things like that. So it was always going to be along the west coast of Victoria. And so we're like, let's move to the beach. And so anyway, long story short, we moved down to Ocean Grove during lockdown. And it's like everything started to change, our mentality on everything. And it's like, oh, the air smells different. Everything sounds different. There's different birds. We can hear the waves in the distance. We're not far from rainforest areas and can walk down on the beach, like all these things. And it's like, wow, this is normally such a normal part of life for people that live in the country or the coastal towns. Like there's ease to life. Everything's slower and more easeful, like, and we look back now, we've been here now a year and a half, I think, a bit over a year, and how we are now compared to how we were in the city of Melbourne is just so different. It's like we've just gone zoom, like landed on our feet. We're more grounded. We're not rushed. We drive differently. Did I mention the air smells better? Like, I can't recommend enough to people. When I hear people say, oh, we'd love to do that, I say, why can't you? Why can't you?
We get so serious about it, right? I know you want to grab people by the shoulders and be like, do it.
I do. And I nearly did. I was at a friend's party in Melbourne about a year ago. And I'm like, can I just say something? If you stop talking about what you want to do and actually action it, you'll be a different person. And she's like, oh, yeah, you're right. And it's, people don't realize for years, they'll talk about this dream of wanting to do something and they'll just keep talking. Another year goes by, another year goes by. And yeah, it's like you seriously just want to shake them, especially after you've made the move and you've let go of so much in doing that move. And you feel free. It's like, come on, people, look at, we've done it. So many other people have done it. If you want to do it, just do it.
Yeah.
Your ego is stopping you.
Yeah, it's that. And sometimes I know for me, Jacqui, it was like I had never considered it as a possibility.
No, you don't live in the country.
No. And I had all sorts of preconceived ideas about what that would even mean, what that would say about me. I mean, that's a different conversation for another day around like the way that we are labeling and identifying and all of that kind of rubbish.
Yes.
Right? But
yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
infinite realities for us to experience. And I just think while we might always feel kind of seduced by the infinite realities, just make sure that the one that you're currently living in at least feels good. At least feels
Yes.
good, right? And we can always
Yes.
wonder, would there be somebody else? Somebody else, geez, somewhere else. Somewhere else. I need to get off this microphone. Somewhere else better suited to me. I was thinking about my time living in the city, which is exactly what I was
I
thinking. And
love it.
it all turned out to be true. There was somebody else and there was somewhere else far more suited to me. Um, while you sit and you contemplate, what reality am I going to experience? I think the important thing for me was in realizing I set the standard for whoever comes next. And I didn't have my son at the time, but I knew, there was a deep desire for me to be a mother. And I was like, what do I want to normalize? What do I
Yeah.
want for him to
Yes.
have as his unconscious bias? And I know we don't necessarily get to choose that, but, environment has a huge impact on who we are
Definitely.
and the way that we see the world. So the ripple effects of the choices we make for ourselves, right? It's never just
Oh,
about us.
exactly. And that's why you should never feel bad about working on yourself and concentrating on that.
Mm. Mm.
Just work on yourself. Things will fall into place. If you're having trouble with your partner, keep working on yourself, working on yourself. It'll just, things fall into place always.
Jacqui, I could have you here for 3 more hours, but I'm going to let you go, my love. I thank you deeply for your time. I'm going to link all of Jacqui's contact details, her photography offering. If you are, close to Geelong and surrounds, you will definitely be able to reach out to her and have her support you in witnessing yourself, my friends, whether that's a family shoot, a shoot for your business, or just you are a woman who's ready to see herself in a new, empowered, embodied light. Working with Jacqui is a necessary stepping stone. So reach out and I will link all of that info. Jacqui, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome. Let's do